Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Now is a great moment to plant a few spring flowering bulbs on your balcony so that after a long, grey and cold winter you have some lovely colorful flowers to enjoy in the spring. And even if you don't have a lot of space, if you have just a tiny balcony or a small patio, don't worry, all you need is one pot to provide yourself with a lovely colorful variety of spring flowers. So today I want to show you how you can design a container that will give you blooms all spring long. Okay guys, so today we are gonna make a bulb lasagne, and there are two ways that you can make a bulb lasagne. You can either choose bulbs that bloom all at the same time, so in spring you have a lovely composition that you can enjoy for a couple of weeks, or you can choose bulbs that bloom at different times, so those that bloom at early spring, mid-spring, late spring, and this way you have a succession of blooms, so you have always something beautiful to look at. And obviously there are many bulbs to choose from, and if you are someone who just starts with bulbs, you are maybe not sure which bulbs bloom at what time. So just to give you an idea, some of the earliest blooming bulbs are crocus, and there are different colors. You can choose something that you prefer. There are also those short iris reticulata. There are early blooming daffodils. For example, the earliest are Ringel's Early Sensation, February Gold, Replete, Ice Follies. Some shorter varieties are Tete-a-Tete, who also bloom quite early. Then just shortly after you have some Scylla, Chinodoxa, Pushkinia. These are also smaller bulbs. And then of course mid-spring you have all kinds of bulbs, hyacinths, muscari, daffodils, early blooming tulips. Then a little bit later, towards the end of spring, you have more tulips, and you start to have early summer, we start to have some colorful, beautiful alliums. So by choosing one type of bulb from each of those categories, you can have a lovely container that you will enjoy all spring long. Every month you will have some beautiful new flower on your balcony. So today I chose white crocuses, which will be my early bloomers. For mid-spring blooms I have both tulips and daffodils, because daffodils usually bloom a little bit earlier than tulips, so I will have daffodils and then shortly after they will be joined by tulips. And to finish the spring season I chose some tall, very funny looking alliums, which I will plant in the center. And crocus, because they are smaller, they will be around the edge, and that's usually the rule for all smaller bulbs. You would want to plant them around the edge of the container, because just when you plant smaller bulbs in the center, they usually get overcrowded by those larger bulbs. So now for planting, you will need a container with a drainage hole at the bottom, and you will need potting mix. Obviously you can choose either multi-purpose potting mix or loam base potting mix, but choose a potting mix that is well draining. For the size of the container, you can choose whatever you like, however large container suits and fits your space. I'm choosing something that is fairly well, medium size to large, but you could choose something you could choose something as small as this. You will just use less bulbs. There's not really a rule of how many bulbs you can fit. I guess it's just question of experience and knowing how large those bulbs get, but I will try to give you a rough idea once we start planting. Okay, so now I will have a close-up on my container so that you see what I'm doing. I don't have a habit of covering the drainage hole. I like the drainage hole to be left as it is so that the water can drain away easily, but if you prefer, you can cover it with a piece of terracotta pot or whatever. I don't ever put any extra layer of drainage at the bottom because in my opinion it doesn't serve anything. I'm gonna use some multi-purpose potting mix. I'm gonna fill the container to about a half. Usually it's indicated at the bulb package how deep you should plant them, but the rule of thumb is the bigger the bulb, the lower you place it. But because I have those large alliums, and they get quite tall, I will plant the bulbs quite deep so that once the bulbs start to emerge, if I were to plant them close to the surface, the plant itself gets 1 meter tall, so I'm afraid that it would just break. So I'm gonna start with my alliums at the bottom. And now the tricky part is you always plant the pointy side up, but it's hard to tell sometimes which side is pointy because, as you can see here, both sides are pointy. So if you are not sure, you can plant the bulb on the side, and this way they will find their way up. So I'm gonna plant my alliums in the center. I'm gonna cover them with a bit of soil. It doesn't matter that much, even if you, like if you plant them 3-4 centimeters too deep or too shallow, it doesn't matter that much in a pot. So I have a first layer of my alliums. As I said, the bigger the bulb, the lower you place it, but because alliums get so tall, I prefer to plant them a little bit lower so that the plant, once it starts to grow, it is stable in the pot. It doesn't after break or bend over. So my next layer will be daffodils, because daffodils are quite large. So I planted the alliums in the center. So now I would want to plant the daffodils, close but not touching, and also trying not to put them on top of the previously planted alliums. So I'm gonna space them evenly. I'm gonna just space them closer together. Okay, I will cover them in soil. And now, because tulips are quite around the same size, I'm gonna plant them almost at the same level. So I still see where I planted my daffodils, which is a great indicator. I'm gonna plant my tulips in between. So ideally, as I said, you just want to plant them, space them evenly, and don't plant one bulb on top of another, but they should be just fine. So as you can see, I'm planting quite a lot of bulbs in this container, but they all kind of fit. So you see the daffodils have their space and tulips, they have their space. So I'm not overcrowding them too much. Okay, so close but not touching. Here we are. Okay, and now I'm gonna cover them with soil, and at the top I'm gonna plant crocus. And as I mentioned, I'm planting them around the edge so that they don't get overcrowded by those other bulbs. Okay, so now for maintenance of this container, you would want to water it initially. So after planting, you water it, and then throughout fall and winter, I know that some people don't water their bulbs at all. And it probably depends on your climate, if there is some rain during fall, winter, or if you have snow, then that might be enough. But if your container is standing, let's say on a patio or on a balcony, and there's a roof on top and it doesn't receive any moisture, and if you see that in winter or late fall, the soil is really dry, then I recommend that you give it a little bit of water. That's what I do. I go out here like every 2-3 weeks, check on the bulbs, check on the soil, stick your finger inside, check if the soil feels moist to touch, and if it's dry and if it remains dry for a few weeks, then definitely give it just a little bit of water just to keep it moist. You wouldn't want the soil to be, of course, completely soggy, but at the same time you don't want it to completely dry out. So if it feels moist to touch, you don't need to do anything, but if it's dry, give it just a little bit of water. And then in spring, once the bulbs start to emerge, once you start to see some growth, then you will need to water more regularly. You can start to give them a little bit of fertilizer so that you have a more beautiful show. Okay, so that's it for today's tutorial. Hope that you enjoyed it and that you will give a try to bulb lasagne. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video. Bye!